All right, thanks everybody for joining us here. We're going to be discussing January 19th, 2015 and all of the things that have happened on January 19th, 2015. Sophia, Catherine, and William are all here with us. And we are just, we've done a lot of research on this, going back over it several times, and we're going to continue to go back over it because this is a very important date. We have a whole list of things that we're going to cover, and I'm going to go ahead, or I'm going to go through each bullet point. We'll talk about it, and then we'll move on to the next bullet point and see how far we can get here. Okay, so the case activity on the 19th of January 2015. Number 1. Detective Gummert speaks with Sidra the very first time, page 25. So I'm going to open up page 25. This is the first time that Detective Gummert writes this on page 25 in the 94 pages of police reports that we have. So they do have, it looks like the time is not really relevant. So here's what Detective Gummert says. On Monday, January 19th, I spoke to Sidra Alam, the sister of Kamel Crowley, via phone. Sidra advised me that she was currently residing with her father and mother in blank. Sidra stated her mother is currently in hospice care due to cancer and was not expected to live much longer. Sidra gave me a detailed account of her relationship with her sister and her brother-in-law, as well as her family history. So this is one of the many things, because I know we just did a show about a lot of things about January 19th, about the people that were inside of the house. When we started thinking about it, well, there's a lot of other things that happened on January 19th, and I was, a little shocked to know that all of these different things that we're going to cover here today all happened on January 19th. Anybody have any thoughts about this here?
No, you're hitting around the head.
Number 2, Detective Kwakanis gives Detective T. Booth the text message information of a possible drug deal. That's on page 28. And I believe you guys are going to work on adding some of the stuff to the timeline if it's not already on there. I think it's very helpful for people. Okay, great. That's great. Yeah, I think the timelines really kind of help the researchers, the people who are researching this. So, okay, so this is on page 28. This is a report by Detective Tommy Booth, and here's what he says here. On 1/19/2015, Detective Shane Kwakanis had given me some information that a text message was sent from David Crowley's phone to a phone number of 319-360-8803, which belonged to a Christopher L. Peck. The text message was sent at 7:22 a.m. on December 19th, 2014. The text referred to what appeared to be a possible drug deal. The text message referred to, quote, do you have any, and, quote, when and where type of information. I know we've talked about this a lot, but again, we're just trying to cover here today everything kind of related to January 19th, 2015. Any thoughts on this particular paragraph here? There's a lot in there.
If you look at the phone records, David did not send a text on that day or that time.
Very true.
That's, so it's interesting where they would get this data from then. Detective Shane Kwakanis had given me some information. He said he had given me some information. Where is this information coming from? Almost like it's coming from a third-party source, right? It doesn't say, hey, I saw these text messages.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where, like, where is this information coming from? Information. Where is all that coming from? Yeah.
I'd like to reiterate also at this point that the search warrants specifically cover any deleted text messages, any deleted apps. So if David would have downloaded an app for some reason to send text messages, the police would have been able to recover all of those.
Right.
But the police do not mention this in their report here. And so as of right now, that does not exist.
Well, just to add on that, they would have had that in the report too, that they there would have been some kind of hint that there was some kind of app or some type of something that happened, basically, like, oh, we did find a deleted text message. They would have definitely put that in there.
Correct. So we're just trying to cover all the bases here.
Mm-hmm.
And those search warrants can be found on Greg Fernandez's website. Would it be the Gray Stage website?
Yeah. If you go to thegraystage.wordpress.com, graystage.wordpress.com, and just scroll down to the bottom. Just keep scrolling and scrolling past everything, and you'll see all the documents, all of the links to photos, just about everything. I think there may be one or two things missing here, but just about everything you will find there.
So if you're interested in reading those search warrants, feel free to read them, because it does cover all of that.
Would that cover Chris Peck's phone?
No, it was only covering David and Kamel's phones.
Yeah.
And anything that they collected from the crime scene at that time, all the electronic devices from the crime scene.
Yeah, the last sentence here in this message, the when and where, is a little interesting too, because I don't believe Chris Peck lived in Minnesota. I think he was there obviously he was there during that time visiting family or something like that. But to say when and where, obviously when, that makes sense. But where, well, wouldn't it be at Chris Peck's house? Where?
Right.
So that was a little interesting. But, I mean, were they going to meet at a park or something? Were they open to that? That's a little odd.
Well, it's so vague. And so I don't see how we can give any validity to this comment whatsoever, because we can tell by looking at the AT&T phone records that no such text was made to David's phone from Chris Peck. And the fact that they're not a little more clear, other than do you have any? Have any what? Right. Gun ammo? Extra shirts for a shoot? And when and where? I mean, it's so vague. It just... Yeah. And appeared to be a possible drug deal. And I understand their language, they have to do things in non-definitives. However, the previous sentence, the very last sentence to me, totally moots out everything stated before.
Absolutely.
And also, when you look at the phone records, which are also located on Greg's site, at the very right-hand corner of the phone record is GPS coordinates. Yep. And they never left their area, neither David or Kamel, unless they left their phones at home.
Yeah.
So not only did they not send the text messages, but they never left their area. And I don't know a lot of people who would just leave and not take their cell phones with them, right. Either of them, especially when their child is in daycare or school.
Well, that would be one reason why I would think that they did have some other phone that nobody knew of.
Did the police find the burner phones at the house?
No, but they didn't find a phone hole in the ceiling either. I mean, there's a lot they didn't.
They missed a lot, but and that's an understatement.
I mean, you see them going through and turning things upside down and moving them and stuff like that. I mean, unless those phones were, like, hidden within the wall.
Or stolen.
But that just seems like extra stuff. Yeah, or stolen, I mean, which is a possibility.
Just a thought there. Okay, still on page 28. He goes on to say, and this is still by Tommy Booth, Detective Tommy Booth, 119, I contacted Mr. Peck. So he contacts Peck after talking to Detective Shane Klakonis. I contacted Mr. Peck to ask him questions concerning the text messages that were sent from David's phone to his phone. Mr. Peck advised me that he had known David and Kamel for several years and last saw them on December 19, 2014.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just noticed something. So that this supposed exchange could not have taken place on a quote-unquote burner phone because they are referring to David's phone, which is then referred to by the search warrants and then the AT&T record. So it has to be that phone record. And we know and we see, according to that phone record, no such text took place.
Exactly.
Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome.
At this point, the police do not have those phone records yet.
Well, no, they don't. However, which tells us even more that they only had David's phone, the phone that we have, because they took that phone and requested records from it. And then it was David's cell phone that we know that is associated with the case is the one that they're talking about here.
Oh, interesting. So do you think that when this information that Detective Shane Klakanis, the information could have came directly from David's phone? Like they opened up, they accessed his phone and saw the text message on there?
Well, and this is what's interesting because it's saying that he was given information. Now, they have his cell phone, and however you say the detective's name, and I hate butchering names, so the detective. Now, he did an extreme thorough job in checking every electronic device, so he would know that that text did not take place. So who contacted him? Was it Chris Peck, who said, like you said, oh, by the way, here's a text from David? But that is so easy to fake. You can create an entire account, have it show up on somebody's phone as that, and then it'll look like something took place, but it didn't. According to the actual records that they did receive from AT&T via the search warrant, it shows that whoever gave the detective this information was flat out lying.
Yeah, and I don't think it was Peck. I don't think it was Mitch Heil or Danny Mason, because I believe they talked to them later after talking to Peck. But somebody did.
Yeah, somebody did.
And it turned out.
And we're going.
Here's the crazy thing: if it turns out not to be true, why is Peck acting like it's true? Now, he could clear this up for us very quickly with, the text message that shows that, yeah, David called me on December 19th.
Right.
He's not going to do it, but he could.
But yeah, because he better he better show some solid proof, not just something on a cell phone, because the AT&T phone records specifically state this is a false statement right here. And out of all of the so-called missing phone calls, why would AT&T just happen to lose just this one text? David had a text come in on the 16th, the 17th, and then the 24th, and that's it. Nothing going out, just those coming in.
And doesn't the records also show that data being used too?
Let me pull that up real quick.
Show which data is being used?
Like if you were to log on to Facebook, it would show that certain data is being used, or
well,
I don't know. I keep getting messages from AT&T saying you've used so much data today.
Oh, I see.
So
I don't know.
Yeah,
on here all it just
cellular data.
Yeah, it just shows it's coming in. It doesn't say anything else.
Okay, I just wanted to see if that would have it there. I don't remember seeing it. I just remember seeing text messages and phone calls.
Yeah.
But I do get messages about that.
Because maybe you're not using Wi-Fi for your phone?
Yeah, if I, when we would go on our trips and stuff like that, I would get messages saying, you use so much data.
Right, my data.
I've been driving this whole time. How could I use that much data?
Yeah.
Yeah, Waze will just eat up your data quickly. Mr. Peck describes David and Kamel coming to his residence on December 19th around 1 p.m. So he's backing up this story.
Yeah. He backs up that he was there. He backs up that, you know, he had spoke to David. He backs it all up.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, once again, I feel like there should have been some kind of proof that he should have provided, you know, especially because, I mean, at this point, I don't recall if they had the search warrants for the phone yet, but I mean, they could have easily gotten something from his just to kind of confirm.
That is a
Can
good
I
question.
add something at this point?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
On November 19th, there is an exchange between Chris Peck and David.
On November, can you tell what time?
I don't believe it matches. I mean, I know we went over that before, but I don't think dates at the time matches.
Maybe
Yeah,
AT&T got the month wrong.
Yeah, because I don't see a text on the 19th. So where is that, Sophia? Is that a call or a text? Because I'm not seeing the text on the records.
I have to go back and double check.
Okay, I'm looking at the records right now, so you guys go ahead.
Okay. All right.
That's right, you do have the record.
Yeah, no call either. Not on the 19th.
Not on Kamel's phone, her new phone either.
Let me check her phone. Hold on.
Because I think one of them has like text messages at the very, very bottom or something. Let's see. So, yeah. So here, I mean, Chris Peck is committing to a crime over the phone. I believe this is over the phone, as far as I know. Right? I don't think that they went to Chris Peck's house or wherever. I don't think he was in town at that point on the 19th. I could on January 19th. I could be wrong about that. But he admits to a crime. This is a crime. You're not supposed to have weed in that state.
Mm-hmm.
Let alone sell it to your friend.
Right.
Right.
To sell it to somebody. To sell it to somebody who a couple days later ends up dead.
Right.
It's a pretty big lead there.
And looking on Kamel's text and phone records from AT&T, there were no calls or texts made at all to anyone on November 19th.
Okay.
17th and then the 20th, but that's it.
Okay.
I think this was the phone stuff that Caleb had created. I'm looking at, yeah, it was from the phone stuff that Caleb had created. And I think that we had found that there was some errors with that.
Okay.
And he wrote down 11/18/14, call to Chris Peck, 3 seconds.
Yeah, it's not on any. I'm looking at the AT&T and I don't see that at all.
Okay, then I am incorrect.
Right, let me see.
I mean, I remembered correctly, but it was something that we had already debunked.
Let's see.
And
Double check. Okay, keep going. I'm going to double check, and if I'm wrong, because I'm looking at the records, let me compare it with what I wrote in my log. So go ahead.
Okay. So the police are doing a lot of things here on January 19th, 2015, contacting a lot of people. And at the same time, we have a group of people that are going to be inside of David's house. And so this is what really kind of helped me kind of narrow down, okay, we have people claiming to be in there, people claiming not to be in there. This can really help narrow down who could have actually been in there during those 25, 30 minutes on January 19th, 2015, when the 911 call came in. It doesn't mean that other people couldn't be there later, at a later time, but it just seems really, really odd about some of the times don't seem to really match up. So I think just kind of doing what we're doing here, just kind of going through this very, very casually and just kind of chatting it out, kind of working it out. Talks like this really help me work these things out. Doesn't matter how many times we go through them. Sometimes it's good to keep going through them because things change, opinions change, views change, but the facts don't. So that's what we're looking. That's why we always come back to these documents. They don't change.
Okay, and let me correct myself. So on the 18th, a call was made that lasted roughly 3 seconds from David's phone to Chris Peck on the 18th.
November 18th.
November 18th.
November 18th. Can you tell what time?
Yes, it was at, let's see, connection time was 19:23, so 7:23 p.m.
7:23 p.m. Okay. And
then it said that it was 7:22 a.m.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're
How interesting.
They could have mixed them up, which is, I mean, really bad on their part then.
Well,
I think if we got that on record too.
Yeah. If they didn't check David's phone at this point on January 21st, when this report was actually written, if they didn't check Chris Peck's phone, I don't know.
But you know what just struck me about all this, why this completely moots everything that Peck says, and why is he stating this, is because then he truly did not see David on December 19th. If that call, if the November 18th call was about the supposed thing, then he didn't see him on December 19th, or not for this purpose.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Lots of head scratchers here, just in these few sentences. Still, something is just not adding up. So they met on December 19th around 1 p.m. This, according to what Peck told the cops, and it was just David and Kamel. They picked up weed and pretty much left. Here's Mr. Peck knows that the meeting happened on December 19th, 2014, because it was just 2 days prior for him leaving to Iowa for Christmas. So Peck is certain on that date.
Can we say setting up an alibi?
Yeah.
That's just weird. There's so much overshare here, and yeah.
Yeah, because that would put him out of town.
Yep.
On the 21st.
Yeah, which circles back directly to what Sophia and I's theory is on this one, that these people were basically just scattering at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Wished him a Merry Christmas and a safe trip. Peck states that the last time he spoke with the Crowleys was on December 19th and has not spoken with them since that day. Okay, Mr. Peck was very
I get a Home Alone vibe from that whole line right there. Have a Merry Christmas, that whole part with the gangster on the TV. Just saying.
Filthy animal.
Exactly.
Mr. Peck was very cooperative and forthcoming with his information. I really wish they would have... Yeah, well, anyways. He told me that I needed to speak with Daniel Mason and to Mitch Heil, who were also part of the project. So on the 19th, Chris Peck makes sure that the cops know who they should speak with. They need to speak with Danny August Mason and Mitch Heil. Pretty interesting that it's just those two when we know there's a lot of other people involved. But again, those are those three: Danny Mason, Mitch Heil, David Crowley. There's a lot of photos when all of this, when the Gray State 2012 trailer really started taking off. Those were the three guys we would always see photos of, and they were always kind of front and center. There's a lot of people working behind those scenes too, but those were kind of the main three guys that were part of this project. So, so I get that, why he's saying them. Mr. Peck said it had been over a year since he had seen Mitch, but had just spoken with Daniel Mason the day before. So he speaks with him on December 18th. A lot of interesting things regarding Danny Mason. December 18th, right around that time, with the whole Gray State project. And then he gave him Danny's cell phone number. Okay. Let's see. Mr. Peck left the door open for future communication. If you had any further questions, he'd be more than happy to answer. I left Mr. Peck my phone number to call me back in case there was anything further he could think of. I remember, and it's just laying out timeline. Okay. The interview was recorded. I didn't know. I didn't realize it was recorded. That's pretty big. Later downloaded. May need to request that somehow if possible. That's pretty.
We could definitely get that too. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to at least hear that.
Well, especially knowing that the phone records do not support this. Yeah, the police should take a second look.
Absolutely.
Anything else on that point there?
Well, the one thing I noticed too is like, and obviously we'll see this with the next two interviews with Detective Booth, is that these guys like to, well, maybe not with Mitch Heil, but we know that Chris Peck and Danny August Mason like to go in a shift, like they're kind of like controlling the flow of things, of when, like, for instance with Chris Peck, oh, you should talk to these two guys, and then Danny August Mason's like, well, you should talk to this guy. They're shifting they're just really controlling that flow of where you like tell them, hey, you need to go speak to this guy because this guy's going to have the information you're looking for, and then this guy's going to go and he's going to go and back me up on this one. But that's the thing is, like, did Chris Peck need to actually go and say that oh yeah, go speak to Danny August Mason? No, there's literally no reason for him to do that. And Danny August Mason, same thing. He didn't need to go and push Booth in the direction of anybody else either. So
yeah, I mean, how did Peck know that they hadn't talked to them yet?
Exactly, which comes back to this whole thing of, okay, well, this is a little suspicious as well. And once again, the fact that Booth didn't pick up on that is a little mind blowing here. So it's pretty much late at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. It leads more toward directing the narrative than being helpful.
And who do we see that from? Killers. Just saying. Not saying they are, but
Detective Booth speaks with Danny August Mason, okay, on the same day. So on 1/19, I spoke with Danny August Mason. Mason advised me that he had known David Crowley for approximately 4 years and was one of the actors on the Crowley's concept trailer. Mr. Mason became involved with Crowley when he met him through his company called Bullet Exchange. Okay, we know about that. Mr. Mason had stated that the concept trailer was made and held in I can't get over this thing. He was one of the actors. I mean, that's just, at this point, Danny August Mason is in a heated battle, a heated legal battle with David Crowley, and we have all of those text messages and their email messages. Their email messages that go back and forth about that whole issue with David and his lawyer and Danny August Mason stalling. David wanting him to sign some paperwork and Danny August Mason just not doing it, not going for it. Had no intention of it. It's what we learned later on. He had no intention of it. But if you read what Danny Mason was writing to David, it comes off a little different. He's like, well, I need to read it. I'm not sure. Sure, I'll sign it, but I need some more time. I need to learn some different things. And, it's just like he goes, Danny August Mason, and this is all, this is September of 2014 that they're going through. They have exchanges all the way up to, I think, December 18th or December 19th, probably around this same time. But basically, Danny August Mason is like, I can't sign it right now, and then pretty much is like, I can't sign it ever. I won't sign it. He's got some reasons. None of them have anything to do with being an actor. So that's the whole problem. He doesn't say that he's the he doesn't say that he's the co-creator of Grayscript, which is what he tells us. It's what he tells everybody else. But to the police, unless I'm missing it here, I don't see anything about him talking about being a co-creator at this point.
Even in his letter that you just showed, it doesn't state that he is co-creator. He's just having a hissy fit because he spent 4 years working on it, and due to the parameters that the Hollywood producers were putting out, he was going to be dropped from that point forward. So he was just angry. It wasn't his. But not only that, now, when you do some further research, Danny didn't meet David through Bullet Exchange. He met him through David's film instructor at school, at college. So there's nothing about what he's saying so far that is true.
Which, I don't recall David's film instructor actually being involved with Bullet Exchange, though, either. I could be very well wrong, but,
well, they both went to the same film school, right? They're both doing stuff at the same film school. So
And look at this. He's demanding. He thinks because he's put energy into this movie that he's entitled to 10%. And this is the thing. This is the problem with copyright.
As an actor, right?
People just don't get. He's so full of himself. He's entitled to crap, and that's the legal truth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just because I go out there and I walk down the street or I mow my lawn every day and I'm renting somewhere, I can't go up to the homeowners and say, for 20 years I've mowed your lawn and I've kept your grass clean. Now you owe me 10% of the property value. They're going to laugh at you like, yeah, nice, thanks for the work, goodbye. And so it's kind of the same thing. Did he help do casting? Yeah, I mean, obviously he did work on it, but that doesn't make it his work. Doesn't make it his copyrighted work. Right. So yeah, it's just interesting.
This is what he wants. He wants a complete access and control to Gray State, the Rise.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah, he's demanding things he's not legally entitled to.
Mm-hmm.
Something that was written, and then in David's house, right? This is what was written, that they say was one of David's suicide notes. Open the Rise. Coincidental?
Oh, good point, Greg.
Well, but see, here's the thing with Danny August Mason, him just telling the police that he's just an actor and he has no rights to it. I mean, they obviously got access to this. They should have questioned him just for this alone. Yep. Not for the fact that he lied about some of these things too. But I mean, it's really once again very, very mind blowing that they didn't, he just literally just, oh yeah, okay, it's no big deal. This has nothing to do with it. I mean, the movie has everything to do with this. What David was what they were putting together has everything to do with this. I mean, look at all the people that we see get the most suspicious. You got Sean Wright, you got Mason Hendricks, you got Danny August Mason, Chris Peck, you get what's his name, Mr. Chambord. I mean, you're getting all these guys. They get really, really fishy right after the death. Not to mention, good old Uncle Joe, getting real suspicious. You get all these guys that basically they start getting shifty and yeah, well, this is how David was, and we're gonna push that PTSD, but not PTSD, and all this. They're trying to that's all they're doing here, is shifting the narrative as much as they possibly can, and. Like I said, it's mind-blowing that Booth did not pick up on this,
Yeah.
Yeah, and not only that, the part on his letter where he states that he feels he should get 10% of the gross revenue. David wouldn't even have gotten 10% of the quote-unquote gross revenue. And, again, just goes to show, how uneducated he is in the... Yes. Ways of selling something, especially to Hollywood. Say that it was funded for, which we know that they were going to fund that for $30 million. David may have walked away with $200,000, and that's just it. And so he thinks he's supposed to get 10% of $30 million when the writer himself wouldn't get that. I mean, it's just the arrogance, and it's just mind-boggling.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Greg?
Go ahead.
Who is Robert Hoyt?
I don't really know that much about Robert Hoyt.
Yeah, to continue working on this project with Robert Hoyt and produce the finished project for our fans.
I'll look him up real quick.
I remember seeing this name someplace else.
Yeah, the name has come up. It's come up a couple times. When I spoke with Hendricks. When Hendricks found out that Danny August Mason was going to, when he was trying to go forward with David's project with Joe Biggs and some other guy, and I think Robert Hoyt was involved in that too. So after David's death, even though they all think David Crowley is guilty, that he's a child killer, he's a wife killer,
right?
He's nuts, but they're going to take his project and they're going to try to make money off of it too. So, and this Robert Hoyt apparently is a big part of that, if I remember correctly.
Interesting.
He may have some Hollywood ties. I think I remember seeing a photo of Hoyt and Danny August Mason and some other people at one of the Minnesota film festivals. So. But that is interesting that he wants, I just noticed that I thought he wanted 10% of the rise, but no, he wants 10% of whatever may be generated from Gray State moving forward. Well, David had a lot of plans. They had a lot of plans for video games, for books, for tons of different stuff. This whole movie would have really helped all of these guys. So I know we talk about motive and stuff, but
Robert Hoyt was an associate producer.
He was an associate producer?
Yeah, I'll send you this link real quick. This is weird.
The only point I want to make here is that Danny August Mason has motive for David not to die. A lot of these guys, they have motive for David to not die.
I don't see it that way.
I know that there's a lot of people that know. I see it as
his motive for him to be dead, because then since David was not going to budge because he couldn't budge, David had no legal way to even grant that, even if he wanted to. So by having David out of the way, then he thought he could take full control, which he's tried to do.
Correct.
Yeah, because he had gone to California. He tried to sell the script. He tried to continue this by filing with the Secretary of State, was it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In Minnesota, he did the Gray State Universe.
Yeah.
And then after he filed that, I mean, like within days of filing that, he was in California trying to sell the script.
Yeah.
Right.
And this was in May.
So just to clarify what I found, this is for Gray State The Rise, what I just sent you, Greg, or what I sent everybody in the Facebook message. Robert Hoyt was the associate producer on that for production. There's still a few people in here I don't recognize.
On the Rise?
Yeah, that's what it says right here. Technical team, Gray State The Rise. It has to be translated from Portuguese to English.
Because the Rise was never done, I guess, unless...
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it was never finished, I should say. It's not that it wasn't done, it was just never finished. David never got to finish it. The Goons finished it after David's death.
Mm-hmm.
We have the one, the leaked version, David's rough cut. So I wonder, so if he was a producer on the rough cut, then that's pretty interesting. But here we have...
Like I said, there's people in here I don't recognize.
This is one of the first times we have teams forming here, and teams are forming as early. I really think as soon as David's script gets, as soon as he starts working with the Michael Entertainment Group, that's when we see a lot of sides forming. People are taking sides, and it's kind of like, there's different teams, and when you look at, I started looking, well, who was on David's team?
Right.
It's just his wife, really.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's really it. When you really get down to it, I mean, Heil was there, but Heil leaves. Heil wants to go do other things. Heil feels like there's no money being made here, which is weird because there's obviously something going on here, but Heil doesn't want to wait for that. He still has some right to it, I would think. He still has some right to a lot of this stuff, as much as Danny August Mason did, but or else Heil wouldn't have David wouldn't have wanted Heil to sign away his rights. Yeah. I'm sure Mitch Heil got some type of form that he signed away that's similar to what we have that David sent to Danny August Mason.
Yeah, I thought Heil did sign. I thought he said he had no problem, so he signed it off, and he's like, I don't, because he wished the best for his friend.
Yes. Yeah. He did.
I'll send you guys more stuff.
They were still business partners for Hothead, I think. Yeah, they're still for the Hothead thing. But I mean, the way David was, I don't think he would have burned any of these guys. Had the movie done well, had everything done well, I think they all would have benefited from it. Whether they know that or not, obviously it sounds like they didn't realize that, but they would have benefited from all of this, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, just for them being in there, I believe there's going to be some royalties I believe they could have gotten from that at the very least.
Yeah, I think after David's death, they were, they wanted to benefit by being victims.
Mm-hmm.
They try to play the actual victims, and nobody's buying that crap.
Well, yeah, and even on top of that, like, look how much money they didn't get.
Right.
Okay, and I don't see that they would have gotten any financial compensation. Their name was not on anything. However, where I see where they would have benefited extremely a lot is that once David had gotten there and established himself and this movie had been up and running, at the parties that they throw, those guys could have been invited, and look who they could have met.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they just blew it.
Yeah, that would have opened up doors for them.
Yeah, especially Mr. Mason. You know, oh, I'm an actor. I'm only an actor on this film. Oh, okay, sure you are, buddy.
Well, wait, no, that's all he was, but he wants to be more now.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Was only an actor. Let's see if there's anything else. They had raised $61,000. Okay, so Mason is pretty much just telling Booth all this stuff on January 19th, getting a lot of data. The time of when Danny August Mason and Detective Booth speak is still not clear to me. And that's pretty relevant because Danny August Mason was one of the guys who is reported to be in the house on January 19th. So he's doing a lot on January 19th while he's grieving.
Right.
And didn't they speak on the cell phone though?
I'm assuming that. I am assuming
okay,
yes. Yeah.
So he could have been anywhere.
Yeah,
he could have been in the house at the time he's talking. Yeah, you're right. Good point.
He could have been.
Well, I think that if he was in the home speaking to the detective would have noticed.
Right.
Be like, what's wrong? Because,
right.
Well, there's a reason why I'm putting that in there. We'll get into it later in this conversation.
Okay.
But, I mean, he could have been sitting in the vehicle at that time with the detective.
Very true.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Mason was unsure as to whether or not any actual paperwork or contracts were signed to make a full-length movie. This also shows how much David was keeping Danny Mason out of everything that he was doing going forward. Danny August Mason was not going to be part of it. Once we got the 2013 script, that really confirmed it for me. It was like, okay, Danny August Mason's character is in the 2013 Gray State script. He's not in the 2014 Gray State script. Not even a similar character, because I had thought, well, maybe David had combined different Charles Hubbell's character and Danny August Mason's character into one. But no, it really seems like the 2014 script was really the first vision. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's kind of what I've, over the last couple of days going back over the two, that's kind of what I've been, thinking about, because even when David talks about that 2012 trailer, a lot of the whole Mason stuff, the whole chopping off people's heads, he doesn't really talk a lot about that. And so this 2014 script that he ended up pitching to Michael Entertainment Group, I kind of believe that's David's vision. That may have been his early vision too, not just his latest vision, and they all thought that he was nuts and changing everything. I think the 2013 script, they went off the freaking rails, and that was a clusterfuck, and that had to be changed. That had to be pulled back, and that's what the 2014 script is taking what little was good in the 2013 script and making some sense out of it. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
It makes sense.
Well, see, in my opinion too, we've talked about this when we talked about the scripts, and my belief is still pretty firm on this, that David honestly viewed himself as the main character. I think that's how he was writing it, was the main character was him. As you get two sides of David, basically, with this. Back in 2013, when he's researching, the occult, so he can get this script done. Obviously, we got to see two different writing styles throughout that, and that's pretty easy to point out. But the 2014 script, both descriptions of the lead character, they were very, very much David. You could just tell the way he was speaking about it, what he's interested in, his fitness level, things like this. Both characters were very, very fit. Once again, they also had prior service. even just like the description of how they carried themselves, all this. I mean, just you can literally cross-reference that with how David carried himself on every type of media we've ever seen him on.
Right.
So I don't think David was writing that for Danny August Mason personally. I don't think that was meant for him to portray him, because I don't think he even saw Danny August Mason as good enough to portray him. So
Are you talking about
Mm-hmm.
the 2013 script or the 2014? When you talk about
both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah. Both Daniels.
And if David was working on the 2013 script at the time that he died, I personally could see how he could have slipped into the darkness and was going, getting lost in that. But he wasn't working on that. He was working on the 2014 script.
Well, he made that very apparent too, because he talked about the whole, this isn't going to sell, right? The 2013 script is not going to sell. He made it very clear. I think it was a couple times he did that too. He's just like, this isn't going to sell. So you basically see that shift. I mean, it was pretty apparent. I don't understand how those guys didn't understand it was that apparent, but to each their own, I suppose. Hot damn.
Well, maybe they just didn't think that we would get the scripts and read them, and that we would just believe whatever they said.
You're absolutely right. They have told us that several times. You will never get anything. You deserve nothing. We were not supposed to get anything. You're right.
Done goofed.
You shall not.
That just tells you kind of Exactly. They're trying to Gandalf us, and they failed.
they didn't
this is
realize
alternate history when Balrog says no.
They were the Balrogs. Nobody has any idea what we're talking about here.
That's all good. It's all good. Pop culture is good for everybody to go and get a little reference of.
Lord of the Rings. I've been reading that a lot lately.
Lordy.
So this is also where, going down to page 31, the last time Mr. Mason saw David Crowley was in September, but he could not remember the exact date. Nobody can remember the exact dates of these things. A lot of this stuff,
right.
I mean, that may not be true. We may be able to do a whole show on the selective dates that they know. These dates they're sure of. And these dates they're not sure of. Do a whole show on that stuff. He stated he had come over to the Crowley residence to talk to David concerning the movie and where the movie was heading. They talked to David out in the driveway of the residence. This was another big thing, because David was not letting people into the house during this time. So as far back as September is a big month. In a future podcast, when we finally get to the main, to the last chapter of my book, September. If anybody really wants to go and get a good idea about David's mentality in those last couple months, go back to his Facebook page, look at his posts from, I believe it's September 26th, maybe September 30th, and he says, for the next 20 minutes I'm going to answer any questions. And people ask him all of these great questions. There's a lot of great stuff there. So as far back as September, David is not letting people in his house. He's trying to get these guys to sign their contracts. And we know that, there's some other things that happened with Sean Wright on December 9th, where Sean Wright is trying to get a hold of David, and David is just not cooperating. So Danny August Mason, again, this is one of the other talking points. They keep bringing it up. David lost a lot of weight, lost a bunch of weight, and he was fragile. Hendricks said David looked like shit. Sean Wright, I think, said something very similar. But, takes one to know one, maybe. But Mr. Mason stated that this was not much uncommon for David when he would get wrapped up. in his project and writing his script. So it wasn't uncommon for David to lose a bunch of weight and to look fragile, or just it's a little weird there. If you listen,
sure, I gain weight when I'm looking at this shit.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm sitting here writing, and I'm watching my stomach grow. It's like I'm
developing a tire. Great.
Yeah.
And not only that, the autopsies refute what they just stated. The autopsy said that he was a well-nourished and healthy young man.
Ooh, great point. Oh, great point.
Yeah, I mean, these guys were totally anticipating we weren't going to get crap.
Yep.
And that's their downfall, because, well, we got a good portion of things, and then, of course, they tried the whole thing of, oh, well, you don't have everything, but, I've got everything. Well, oh, wait till we dig.
Yep. And that's what's really sad, is if they have everything, then they should be right here with us. And if they have everything and they're not right here with us, then that's why people question them.
Yes,
because this stuff is all, you know what the facts show. Why are you going against what the facts show? And that's what makes them lose all of their credibility at some point.
Didn't have much to start with, but that's all good.
That's true. But, after September meet, Mr. Mason stated he received an email on the 1st of October 2014 from David's attorney. Okay, here's where it gets really good. The email was asking for Mr. Mason to release any rights he had as an actor in the movie so that David could take the script and the movie in a different route than what was originally planned. Mr. Mason stated that he did not reply back to the email. Not true. That was sent by David and had taken the release form to his attorney to review before signing anything for David. It could be true. It could not be true. I mean, they're talking as late as December 16th. So, yes. December 9th, there's something going on here. December 16th, September 29th. So there's some interesting stuff there. September 26th, right, all around the same time there. Lots of interesting things are happening. So, let's see if there's anything. Yeah, December 7th, Mason receives another email from Crowley, and they're going in a different path. He needed to sign the release form. December 7th was the last contact Mr. Mason had with David or anyone else in the family. So December 7th would have to be... it's not really true. It's really December 9th, because on December 9th is when David Crowley writes to him. And then Danny August Mason writes back on December 16th. So, again, these guys really have some issues getting some of their dates wrong. So, I mean, I don't know. I
think they were probably nervous, and they were probably speaking to people.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking to the cops,
they slip up, it's game over. And while they did slip up, and while the cops were like, oh, that's okay, guys,
don't worry about it,
it's okay, I believe you.
2 days off on that one. Mr. Mason asked me if I had talked to Mitch Heil. So again, the police are asking them who have they talked to. They want to know who they have talked to, and this is a little different than what Chris Peck is saying. Chris Peck is saying you guys should talk to these two guys. Mm-hmm. Danny Mason is saying probably got a heads up from Chris Peck. There's no way that Chris Peck didn't say, "Hey, I just talked with the cops. They're going to be calling you." Well, that's what friends do.
Well, like I said earlier, it's like the fact that, like I said, you got one guy who's naming two guys, right? Mm-hmm. So there's no way to go even know which direction he's going to actually get going. So in a way, yeah, I mean, Chris Peck kind of screwed up their little plan. If they were planning this, then he screwed it up right there, because now they don't know which direction they're going. So Danny August Mason's trying to basically kind of cover that. Hey, well, did you talk to Mitch Heil yet? Because if what they should have done, if they were trying to direct it, like, I don't want to say intelligently, because it's not intelligent to do that anyways, is it makes it very apparent that you're trying to go and control the narrative. But if he were to do it a little more intelligent, hey, have you talked to Danny August Mason, right? And then just name the one guy, and then next guy will, oh, well, you should check this guy here too. Is he knew him better. He was his best friend, and
yeah, and that would be good, but if you read here, this what Danny August Mason is almost kind of subconsciously giving them motive for Heil.
Yeah.
He says that Mr. Mason stated that he believed that David Crowley and Mitch Heil had dissolved their partnership in the business, but believed that had happened on good terms. So he's kind of planting those seeds there that, hey, you guys need to talk with him because there was some type of falling out. He's not really too keen on his own falling out. Of course, he mentions his falling out, whatever it was, signing different documents and stuff like that. But he's just an actor, so it's not as bad as a quote-unquote business partner, which is what he tells him that Heil is. Even though, as Catherine and other people have constantly pointed out here, Danny August Mason, not only does he consider himself some type of a business partner with David, he considers himself a co-creator, and in some quotes, he calls himself a creator.
Yeah.
Great state. Totally off topic, by the way. I don't know if you guys watched that video that I put up of some of their old clips, but Danny August Mason said that he could teach a monkey to kill in about 10 minutes.
I saw that.
I didn't see that. That's hilarious, though.
That's a great line. You will watch David's face when he says that.
I would like to interject something here real quick about this, where Danny
back on track, please.
Where in the reports Danny says that the last time he had contact with the family was December 7th.
Yes.
Well, according to the AT&T phone records, he did send a text to David's phone on the last time, December 17th, 2014, at 11:52 a.m.
That would be.
That's not mentioned anywhere.
That's not mentioned anywhere. No, and that would be one day after Danny Mason contacts David and says, "Buddy, please give me a call about moving forward before I sign these forms." So he says before I sign these forms, which means he is trying to let David know I have some intention of signing these forms.
Yep. Or at least giving him that kind of illusion.
This is crazy because if you look at the December 9th is also the same day where David Crowley is sending Danny Mason this whole thing and pretty much calls Danny Mason out on this thing. If you read this December 9th message, this is the same day that Sean Wright is desperately trying to get in contact with David Crowley on the same day. Interesting.
Well, and if you look
wait, go down to the other part of that text from David to Danny. Guarantee casting as lead role in John.
Wink.
Well, he meant that there's going to be a Gray State series.
But John Wink is not part. He's not part of the movie.
I know.
He's gone, right?
But also, keep reading what he says. He says, "But I will not be able to sign you into any contracted roles until I have your signed release." So it's basically out of his hands. It was all up to Danny, and Danny kept shooting his own self in the foot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, especially because, this is rather generous of David, too, is he's like, he knew that this guy was a scumbag, and he just decided, hey, you know what, I'm going to hook him up since he's the one who, he got me involved in this from the get-go. So, I don't know if you guys recall that part, too, but Danny August Mason, I believe in one or two of the interviews he's had, has directly come out and said, hey, I'm actually the one who got David into this, and we got this whole. So this is basically I'm the starting point here, and David basically helps get this going. But this guy, he's given a generous offer too. I just don't understand it.
But again, it's his ego, it's his narcissism. There's an odd a podcast that he did with someone, and he talks about when he first introduced himself via email through the film instructor to David. He sent David a whole bunch of web links to Paranormal Activity and all this other stuff, and then David contacted him, and then that is how their relationship began. And Danny. I'm sorry, I lost my point. What I was going to make. Sorry.
I was curious as to why you would send him so many paranormal things, though.
Well, Danny was really into that. In fact, that's why he was on a particular podcast that does occultism, paranormal stuff, and he was on there for like 2 hours just talking about how all of his experience and how he was really in deep into the paranormal and occult stuff. And
yeah, let's definitely put that in paraphrasing though, because that guy, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about when it comes to any of that stuff. You know, I mean, even it's just like his Jeet Kune Do talks. You know, like he's the master of this. It's like, dude, no, you're not.
He can teach a monkey to kill.
But apparently, he is master assassin. American School of Assassins.
Well, that's where the narcissism comes into play again.
Yep.
Planet of the Apes type stuff.
Planet of the Dams. Oh shit.
Yeah, but Catherine, I think you're talking about maybe one of these shows that Danny did with a clairvoyant, a medium, and co-host and a paranormal investigator, Jason Hifeli. That was one of them.
It was a woman.
Paranormal.
Were you talking about the two Southern folks?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. What?
Were you talking about the two Southern folks, their podcast?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I heard. I didn't get to listen to the whole thing, but I did hear it, and I was just sitting here, just literally, bashing my head. I'm like, oh my god, this guy's an idiot. This guy's an idiot.
So I listened to the full.
It was such a boring conversation.
Oh, it was.
To me, it was boring, but I'm sure there was several little juicy tidbits in there.
I'm sure.
Oh, there are.
Scattered.
Yep.
I was just having trouble listening to him because he was just annoying the hell out of me. Like, oh my god. Like, why? I'm curious about his background and actually where he got started though. Like where he actually apparently got started. I really honestly don't buy any of his stories. I think he's fabricated it all. So I think he's got probably a very, very boring life. Right, I'm not saying living a normal life is boring per se, but there's nothing really extraordinary about his life. I think he tried to go and throw all this out there. So, I mean, I started looking him in high school and all this kind of stuff. I'm sitting here this guy had just an average life. I mean, he wasn't anything special. There was no paranormal activity that he was really involved in. I mean, he was the classic, somewhat popular kid in high school. I mean, it's what is so special about you other than you had a few friends and you don't really speak to a whole lot of them apparently anymore? I mean, I can go on. I mean, there's a long list of things. Oh, jeez. But yeah, I mean, there's just an assortment of information there. Just I think he just fabricated everything. Honestly, I really do, because his Jeet Kune Do story doesn't add up. His paranormal activity stuff doesn't add up at all. I mean, I've literally looked at all this stuff, and it does not make any sense. You even got in touch with some of the Oregon branches that actually they're paranormal investigators, and they're saying, no, this guy's basically full of shit. So, I mean, if I can get in touch with some people that's what they're in business for, is paranormal investigation, and they're saying, no, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean, I know stuff about martial arts, so I mean, I can verify this shit about him. I know for a fact he is just speaking on his butt. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So I think majority of his background is, a lot of it's fabricated. And once again, we can cross-reference this with what he's actually done that we know of, and we know for a fact it doesn't add up. So I don't know.
Well, and then that just leaves open the question of who is he really?
Yeah.
And why the cover story?
Yeah. I think he's just trying to go and it's like, those people that exaggerate about their lives to go and seem super cool and all this. Yeah. That's this type of guy right here. He is just textbook of that. So it's frustrating to hear from him. So I had a friend like that. It frustrated me to no end, having to hear this day in and day out from this guy. I'm like, oh my god, I was right there. You didn't do that. Come on.
Well,
and I think you could see that in the interviews when Danny August Mason is talking and David never even glances at him while talking.
Yeah.
But when David is talking, Danny August Mason just stares at him intently.
Yeah, he's like, this guy's cool as hell. He's like, I wish I could be this guy. Please give me attention.
Well, then we go to page 32 where Detective Booth speaks with Heil. So he speaks with Mitch Heil. He's speaking with everybody on the 19th. It's pretty interesting that Booth is speaking with all these people. He's not really involved in the following up on who was in the house on January 19th on that same day. He's too busy with all of this. But I kind of thought that, well, even when they go back into the house, when they figure out that there is a bullet, I thought, well, maybe Booth might be involved in that. But he's not. It's really Brian Bone and Sean McKnight. So it's pretty interesting how even some of these police officers could potentially be compartmentalized in this case here.
Well, and what's also interesting too is like this all shows their lack of communication. You know, which I mean that's pretty sad. You got a team of detectives working on this, and they're not communicating everything. I mean, they're missing all this important information. Like if they would have communicated, I'm sure somebody would have at least. I mean, I would at least hope somebody would have picked up on it. I mean, it's right there in their face, but they're just literally just missing it every single time.
Was there anything that stuck out to anybody about Booth talking to Heil, to Mitch Heil? I mean,
well,
a lot of military stuff and.
Well, Mitch Heil is very, very forthcoming. He doesn't direct the narrative whatsoever, other than he basically said, "I don't believe that he had PTSD."
Correct.
That's basically the big thing. He's like he goes over things about David, and the thing is, you'd figure if Heil believed he was guilty, there would have been something like, oh, maybe some PTSD. Oh, you know, he spoke to me at one point about, you know, maybe, committing some kind of terrible act. And he doesn't. He speaks positively the whole time, which right there which once again should be shooting Booth right back in the direction of Danny August Mason and Chris Peck. And be like, wait a second, why are you guys pushing me in the direction of Heil when you guys are trying to say that, you know, like with for instance, Danny August Mason's comment about, basically like trying to go and push this little like seed over on Booth to basically like, oh, well, you need to watch this guy because I don't know if they were actually on good terms. And this proves they were on somewhat good terms at least. At least I would argue. It doesn't. He's not shedding any darkness on him at all. He's like, look, you know, I don't see him having PTSD. He was a stand-up guy basically. So, I mean, he had some issues, but once again, he was in the military. He went to, the Middle East. I mean, yeah, he's going to have some issues from that. But, I mean, once again, he doesn't say he's anti-authoritarian. He doesn't say anything like this in this. So.
Yeah. No, it's just, he just says, you know, he needed to make money, and David was just focused on this project. And
yes.
He wanted to, you know, work on other things, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, this was pretty much David's, you know, the whole thing. He goes into how he met David in September. He had gone over to the residence to meet with him, and David came out and wouldn't let him inside of his residence. And they only spoke in their driveway. At the time, while speaking in the driveway, David had physically and mentally changed, according to Mitchell. His physical appearance looked frail, and he wasn't talking like the David that he knew. According to Mitchell, David was not an alcoholic or a huge drinker. He would drink periodically, but when he would drink to get drunk. That's a military thing. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
And I think
Okay, I'm sorry, Sophia. I just wanted to hear what you were going to say. Sorry.
Yeah.
probably age, too. I mean, the older you get, you don't drink to get drunk unless there's an absolute reason.
That's true.
But when you're younger, you know, that's probably a military thing, too.
Yeah, I always forget about the age. That's a great point because he was young. I mean, when they died, David was only 29. I think his wife was 28. They were really young during that time. Well,
on top of that, I mean, going over this whole thing with the absinthe thing, I mean, we could definitely see this right here. It's like, okay, well, he wasn't a huge drinker, wasn't an alcoholic, so we can already look at those two things like, well, we didn't see any alcohol in the home either. You know,
right.
I mean, I don't recall any image of in the interior of any of the cabinets, really. Like, I mean, where alcohol would have been kept. I mean, I didn't see anything open to that. So, I mean, if there was alcohol could have been a possibility, you'd figure the cops would have actually taken a picture of that. And like, okay, well, they had a pretty large variety of alcohol here, or, oh, look, here's the absinthe that, he mentioned on Facebook. They didn't have anything like that.
Right.
You don't see any empty liquor bottles in any of the trash cans throughout the house.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, like juice containers, eggnog, newspapers, things like that throughout the house. Very healthy living, but you don't see the alcohol bottles. You don't see that.
Exactly.
Yep, and he doesn't mention weed or anything like that, any other extracurricular activities or, pills or nothing like that.
Yep.
Ohio also doesn't mention, hey, you should talk to these guys. You should talk to those other guys. So this kind of stops at that point. He's not passing that ball the way that the other guys did. Oh, make sure you talk to this guy. Make sure you talk to that guy. Both of them mention Heil. Chris Peck and Danny Mason both mention Heil. Heil doesn't mention anybody that they should talk to.
Yeah. I think he distanced himself from all of them as well, so it's at least seemed that way up until, the rise, that unfinished stuff. So.
And it says that it was from the supplemental report 121 2015 at 11:21.
Yes, let's go through like layers here. Wilson writes this on the 22nd, which is based on something that Gummert wrote on the 21st, which is based on what Gummert what happened on the 19th. So it all goes back to the 19th here. So there's like 3 layers there that you kind of have to break through to just get to where Gummert and Sidra are talking. Because as far as I know, Gummert was the only one that had spoken with Sidra. So I don't know, does anybody have anything on this part here? We kind of covered it, I think, a little bit above. This is kind of like a bigger, like a longer version, pretty much, of everything that had happened when Detective Gummert spoke with Sidra over the phone, obviously. But this is the first time that they speak, right, is on the 19th. I mean, what's happening on the 18th? There's a lot of stuff must be happening on the 18th. And again, I'm not sure what time. It'd be nice to have some times of when they...
Well, the 18th is a Sunday. So that's when they did the autopsies, and they probably notified the families in regards to that.
Okay, that makes sense. So the 18th kind of gets shied over, really, right? It's like, what's happening on the 18th?
Well, they had to sleep too. They had just been up almost all night doing nothing the night before. So, and then you have no sleep, and then you've got autopsies. Well, they have to sleep in sometime, and then the next day it seems like they picked up their quote-unquote investigation again.
Well, I know on the 18th they take all of David's guns out of that house. I'm not sure exactly what else they take out of the house, but they do take a list of all of David's guns out of that house. So I'm guessing they also took a lot of other stuff on the 18th. So on the 18th, they're still taking stuff out of that house. Again, that's one more day that they don't see a bullet hole and they don't see a bullet in the living room ceiling and in that attic. So can we assume that they have not checked the attic for whatever reason? The attic was not checked, would not be checked. It's just not standard. I mean, I don't know. Why not check the attic? Is that something
that would have been relevant?
Now they should. I hope that is part of their training now. Make sure wherever you go, make sure you just check the attic, look up, make sure you don't see any bullet holes up there.
Well, I mean, especially if you consider, I mean, like, okay, well, this guy shot himself in the head. Yeah, well, then let's definitely take a look in the attic, especially if that's where we can assume the bullet hole, like the exit wound is. I mean,
that's a great point, and maybe Catherine, maybe you can help us with that too, because based on the autopsies, doesn't it kind of show kind of the direction that they kind of think David was shot in, and wouldn't that prompt to say, okay, well, we I don't know.
Well, that's just it. It says indeterminate. They can't determine the direction of the bullet. However, we know just by the okay. I don't. There's no way the bullet could have gone through one side, did a complete turnaround, and then fly up into a ceiling. And that's kind of what they're expecting us to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Do they give anything about so they don't know where the bullet exited, right?
I'm pulling up the autopsy here real quick because I don't want to misquote.
There was either
It was the left parietal bone.
The parietal, is that where it exited?
Yes.
Yep, left parietal.
Which means if he's standing facing, okay, autopsy, David. Okay, so if he's standing, according to where his body is positioned, he would have been having to stand somewhere facing that wall with the writing on it, which means the left side is pointing toward the window. And yet the bullet hole in the ceiling would have been up and behind his, where his head would have been located, say, to the right. So that it just doesn't make any sense. It's just, yeah, exit left parietal bone with external beveling and radiating linear fractures and scalp. So, yeah, they just can't determine the pathway and trajectory, indeterminate, entrance indeterminate. So, yeah, I mean, if his left side is facing the window, how did he get shot through the head and then have that thing end up in a ceiling?
But his left side, you're right, yeah, his left side is facing the window. Okay, yeah.
And the gun is on the left side, too.
Yep.
And he was right-hand dominant. And if you look at the photos of him shooting guns, his right hand is wrapped around the gun, and then his left hand is wrapped around his right hand.
Yep.
So how did the gun get on his left side?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, jeez.
Not to mention, too, you can also take a look at where the bullet casings are. I mean, I think we spoke about that on a podcast before, but, like, I mean, if you were to go and fire that Springfield, I mean, or is it not Springfield, but it's his gun, and it ejects the casings to the right. So,
yeah.
I mean,
And
where
you see
all
that
the
in the
casings?
photos, too.
Mm-hmm. Where are all the casings?
Sorry.
So one of the casings from that gun, if he did shoot himself in the head on that day, one of the casings from that gun should have been closer to where Kamel and Ranya's bodies were?
Either that, or I would even argue potentially even, I mean, it's hard to say because we don't know. I mean, once again, if that bullet did, in fact, go, from his head, into the ceiling, which, well, we know it didn't, but if it did, then you'd assume he would have probably tilted his head, kind of like cocked his head when he was doing it, kind of like, oh, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, and bam. And then it would, once again, that would have been in between his legs at that point. But
well, and you
have you look at how the body is laying, and
any way to answer that question because you don't know what the shell casing would have been bouncing around on. If it would landed straight on the rug, chances are it wouldn't have moved far. If it had hit like the chair and then bounced off and rolled onto the hardwood floor, we can't answer that. It's really not. We just can't. It's all speculation.
Sure.
Well, exactly.
Or the dog could have moved it.
Right.
I mean, it's literally at this point it's kind of mute because so many answers.
No, it's just questions that that I often go back to, and I'm sure there's there's a lot of other people too that kind of go back to it, especially when you're trying to make some type of sense out of it. But like I said, we're just chatting here. We're trying to figure out what is going on, and we go back to another thing. But I've always kind of wondered about the casing. If the casing exits to the right, probably with a lot of force too. There's just they should have a good idea of kind of where that casing was. But again, they don't even say, okay, David was standing here and shot him. They don't know that stuff. There's very little that they know. So for all of these goons within a couple days to say, hey, yeah, our friend is guilty, it's just stupid. It's really dumb. It makes absolutely no sense if they really cared. And these are guys that are running around on all these other shows and all these other places acting like they care about the government coming down on us, acting like they care about us, they care about truth, they care about this. And here they are confronted with truth, and they do not care about what really happened with David. The proof is clear. These guys do not care. If they did, they would put a lot more thought into this. They would not jump the gun to say that their friend is guilty. They are the gray shame, and it's very shameful, a lot of the things that they have done. Not only that, but that it was like a tidal wave, and a lot of people got caught up in that. I think a lot of people did. I think Sidra may have been one of those people who kind of got caught up in that tidal wave of, hey, everybody's saying David's guilty. You know, they're just expecting you to just kind of go with it too.
Right.
So yeah, as far as, go ahead. I'm just reading through.
And it's disheartening because these are supposed to be his friends. These are supposed to be the people who are working with him closely on this project, and to see them just turn on him within days. You know, like they are willing to believe the worst.
Right. Yeah, I mean, me personally, you know, friends, I let friends into my house. If I don't let you into my house, there's a big, big reason.
Oh, yeah.
You're not my friend. And I don't know if that was the same case with David. I can only go with what I know. It's just, it is very weird that he's not letting anybody in. So when Sidra is not let into the house, to me it's not that weird because David is not letting anybody else in either.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. I mean, like my friends, like, I mean, I let my friends in, but I don't let, you know, people I see as potential threat. I don't see, you know, people that are unwelcome in my home. They're not coming in, simply put.
Yeah. Yeah, and there had to have been something had to have been going on between Kamel's family for Sidra not to be let in the house. I definitely think there was something going on. I don't think it was anything that really had to do with the whole murders and everything like that, but there's definitely some reason why. But again, each family's different. Some families are close, some families aren't, you know. If they have a fight, you know, if I had a fight with my sister-in-law, I may not want her in our house. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all speculation. That's all I'm doing here is speculating on this.
At this point, if my sister had driven 17 hours to come visit me and my husband hadn't let her into the house and I didn't consent to him not letting her, okay, let me rephrase. If I knew that my husband was not allowing my sibling to come into the house after she drove that far, I'd be seriously upset with him.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and I'm only assuming here, was Kamel also on board with this?
I mean, my bet would be, yeah, she didn't want her in either. Question is why.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, I don't buy the whole, you know, I've heard this, I'm trying to remember who I heard it from, but it was in the group a while ago. But it was something along the lines of like, well, because David and Kamel didn't agree with the alum's method of on how they were handling Sidra and Kamel's mom's cancer. I mean, that's no reason to completely just say, oh, I'm not going to talk to the family now. I don't see that as a reason. And I see those two as being reasonable adults. Are like, well, okay, we're not going to cut them off, you know, that's still mother-in-law / mother and all this. I mean, it's one of those things like, well, we just want to go and make sure she's okay.
Yeah. It's hard to say, I guess, because I look at this and I'm like, wait a minute, if my mom is dying or my mother-in-law is dying, like we're going to spend more time with her. We're going to fly out there. We're going to hang out, and and especially considering how close that they were. They were very close on that side. David was close with them. There's no doubt. I have no doubt, anyways. But something happened. Something really happened, and that's why it was weird when Dan Hennon spoke with Kamel's dad and, you know, asked him about that. And he's like, no, we never really fought or anything. You know, we had disagreements and stuff, but the dad kind of played it off like there really wasn't that much going on. So either he didn't really know about, you know, how deep some of the tension was or something. I don't know. Or there's something else missing here.
Mm-hmm.
That was always kind of the way that I felt about that. Let's see. So the missed calls, Sidra stated that she had 2 missed calls on 12/23/24 from an unknown number. The first call was at her work in the morning of 12/23, and the second call was at 11:40 a.m. She stated she had no viable proof that the calls were from her sister, but she believed that they were. Yeah, she told me something similar to that too. To me, whatever I want to think is true here. Her story to me is very consistent. Sidra to me is the only one whose story is consistent in all of this here, for the most part. You know, aside from what she says and what her dad say, it does seem like there are two different things going on there. But the other thing is that the document that we're reading here is from Gummert. We're not getting Sidra's quotes. We're not getting what she's actually saying. So it was, you know, talking with her did kind of help kind of break that down, kind of break some of this stuff down here. But as far as those 2 calls, we have the phone records, and there's no calls made from Kamel or David's phone on the 23rd, right? At this time.
Not that I noticed.
Calls or texts.
So the unknown number, it could be tied to this case. It could not be, but it very well could be. And again, that's another thing that made me think maybe there is another number, maybe there is another phone here somewhere. It's speculation, because when Chris Peck talks about the phone call, when David's dad talks about the phone call, they're not given the phone number that it came from. Hopefully the police got the actual number, you know, not just, oh yeah, it was from David's phone. No, it was from this particular number here. It is a big difference than just saying that it was from David's phone. Because, I mean, at some point they should have went back and said, wait a minute, okay, these phone calls never happened. They're not on the phone records. How do you know, can you show us your phone so that we can see where that number came from?
Right.
They didn't do that. They had no interest in doing that. And again, that's one of the things where the police messed up. One of the reasons why the case needs to be reopened. There's many reasons why the case does need to be reopened, but that is a big one, because that is something that they could probably clear up within a couple minutes. Okay. Let's see. Detective McKnight and Detective Bone meet with the Crowley family. I don't see the page. Do you know what page?
Try 63 or 62.
Okay. There's a lot there, I'm sure, in that one. Was there anything that kind of stuck out to you during that?
It was basically the timeline of for the fall, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the back and forth between Kamel and Allison. But I mean, we've discussed all of this in depth. There we go.
Page 63. Right?
Okay, so right above that is where he had contacted Kate and Dan Crowley. So what page is that? Is that 63?
Yeah, look at the bottom of 62 and the top of 63 is where this starts here.
Okay, right after the medical examiner. And so that had to have been... Can you go up one paragraph real fast, please? he doesn't really state the date, but he did. He got the.
It's this the
Right after the. Okay, the same morning I attended. So that would be the 18th.
Right.
Yes. And then he contacted the Crowley family. So I need to remove that from the list then.
Yeah, thank you for putting all of this together too, because it just really helps. You know, we kind of go through it and like, this and that, but these timelines really do help me to go back when I need to go back to these things. I'm not going to get everything right. Things are going to happen like that, but having those timelines, it's one of the main reasons why I wrote this book. I wrote the book, obviously, to help get the case reopened too, but so that I could use it as a resource, so I could always go back into these things. But it's in book form, and a timeline is definitely something a little more easier, a little more quicker that I can get to and find some of these things when I start second guessing myself, or when I haven't spent time on it. And people need to understand, we don't live, eat, and breathe this stuff either. This is part-time stuff.
Yes.
This is not our full-time job here. We do have other things happening here too. So that's, and there's many people that are listening to this, watching this. I know it's the same for you too. So we do want to try to make it as easy as possible for you to find whatever research, to find whatever data that you are looking for your own research, for your own projects. So this is from Sean McKnight. So Sean McKnight, Detective Sean McKnight and Detective Brian Bone met with Daniel Crowley at his home on the 19th. So this is another thing where it's like, okay, how can Dan Crowley Sr. be at his home and then he takes off to go be with Klein, with Hendricks, with whoever else is in the house on January 19th? He's at his home here. He's with Daniel. He's with his son. He's with his daughter. They're all sitting there. This is one of the reasons why it's like, okay, Hendricks is he keeps going back to saying that Dan Crowley Jr. was there. You have Chris Klein saying Dan Crowley Sr. and Jr. were both there. We know they're both here on the 19th. Then you have, and what's interesting is that they actually go back and they ask David's dad if he was in the house, in David Crowley's house on January 19th, and he says no. They never really say anything about going back and asking David's brother. But we know that they have them all here. They're all talking. I can only guess about how long this would have taken, of how much stuff that they talked about. And but this is all very early on, where these two detectives meet with David's father, David's brother, and David's sister.
I mean, I do want to add one thing real quick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's about an hour-long drive from Owatonna to Apple Valley. So, and that's just one way. So, I mean, we'd have to definitely look at. Is it possible? I think it is. I'd have to go and double-check the times, but I don't think it's likely. Not to mention, he also said, no, I didn't show up. I did not go there, But once again, is it possible? I think it is absolutely possible that he could have done that, but why?
I'm trying to find that paper that I have that shows that I.
If we have the timeline directly, we basically do have a timeline for that day, where we can see that yes, I believe there is enough time that he could have left, gotten there, and then gotten back still, and still had enough time to go do all that. But it's at the same time, I'm still asking the question, so why?
Sure.
And we don't have exact times of when Detective Bone met with this family. It just says on the 19th. So it could have been in the morning, it could have been in the evening. We have no clue.
Well, I believe doesn't he get that answer, I believe right at that point, during that conversation, were you at the house? I don't remember when that took place.
Well, he basically says he wasn't at the house that whole day, right? Because they just ask him if he was at the house on the 19th, and he says no.
It's later on when Dan Crowley contacts them about the bullet. Can't remember if it was Rhonda's bullet or item 57, and that's when he was asked if he was in the house.
Yeah, it was on the right after they talked with Klein. So right after that, then they went and asked Dan Crowley Sr., and he said no, he wasn't there because they wanted to go back into the house so that they could find that bullet, or find the bullet hole. Nobody knew about a bullet at all yet. It's just this bullet hole. So they wanted to go back there and check out that bullet hole. So that's pretty weird. But let's see. They didn't know why they were distancing themselves. They didn't know why they were cutting off ties. So they were kind of out of the whole loop too. So I mean, people keep saying they were distancing themselves, but nobody really knows why. Nobody's really giving any reason. And here it kind of makes it seem like it's whatever was going on was really between David and his wife.
Well, I mean, at the same time, we also got to see that there was definitely something in the email between Allison and Kamel, that there was some kind of incident that did occur.
That was just Allison saying something that made David cry. That's all that was.
Well, once again, we don't know how serious necessarily that what was going on. I mean, I believe there was something going on in August. I'm trying to remember where I saw that.
That was in November. November 21st, the day before Kamel's birthday or something.
Yeah.
But see, this is saying that they distanced themselves since mid-October. So again, those times really don't add up, right?
Well, exactly. But the thing is like, I mean, there was that email that Kamel also says that we're dealing with some stuff. It basically it has to do with me and David, and nobody else, or else going to back off.
Right. But the way that it comes off in the sloppumentary is kind of like, they were kind of dealing, there was some issue with them and with everybody else, or I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, there was something going on. I don't think any of us can really say that there wasn't. There's definitely something going on. You don't just distance yourself from people that you've been friendly with, that you just had over, and then all of a sudden you're distancing themselves. The timelines don't really seem to add up. They're distancing themselves from some people in September, in October, in November. There's no thing where they say, okay, we're going to distance ourselves from everybody at this point on. Right? There's nothing like that I'm seeing. I'm actually shocked that David even let all of them in to Ranya's party, because they had already had problems with Danny August Mason, yet Danny August Mason is there. So how big of an issue could there really have been between David and Danny August Mason if he's still letting Danny August Mason at his daughter's birthday party? Now, Danny August Mason also he claims that he was close to Rania too, and I want to believe that that's true. But the problem is, if you're really close to her, if you really care about her, you should be right here with us, because there's clear facts that show that David did not do this. It cannot be proven that David did this. But Danny August Mason goes one step further with the whole pack theory too, and says that it was David's wife too. She was involved in this, and it's all the thing in those messages that Danny August Mason wrote. It's like he was playing a victim, and that was really it. It was all about how this affected him. Yeah. Shauna Wright did the exact same thing, victim. They're playing the victim because their friend killed this kid. And it's like, what are you guys talking about? You guys are full of crap. Anything else here with the 19th, with David's, this side of David's family meeting? They kind of just go through the timeline of everything and what is good, what is bad. The whole
There
email.
is the emails between Allison and Camille. There was a part about it where it said, when I saw you guys in the fall or something like that in August, which is around Ronnie's birthday party, everything was good.
Mm-hmm.
Which debunks the whole narrative of it being tense at the birthday party.
Right.
Because Allison is saying everything was good.
Well, when you watch the video of the party, I don't see anybody, acting tense or nothing weird. I see David hanging out with the guys, and Camille is with Rania opening presents. And most parties I go to, that's how it works. The mom's with the kid while the kid, the dad keeps everybody else occupied. It just didn't jive with me.
It's a lot of work for that the parents have. Plus, they have kids there and everything. Yeah, they're busy.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just socializing and just So yeah, that seemed very desperate of them to kind of say that about David and his wife. There was tension. Okay, well, where's the video of this tension? Where's
right?
Well, to be fair, at the end of a birthday party, I look pretty strained too, because it's stressful at times because you're trying to get everything done. You're trying to appease everybody and make sure everybody's having a great time. And by the end of the birthday party, you want to drink because you're a little stressed out.
Speaking of that, I'll be right back. Give me like 5 seconds here.
Wine time.
I know. I want to drink too. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, and I'm reading Allison's little comment or her email right here. What the F is up? I heard you changed your number. So it's accusatory. I look at these people's attitude and I'm like, I had to backhanded her because instead of saying, what's up, you didn't have to use the F word, but to accuse them and then come to find out they didn't change their phone numbers. The phone numbers were changed for them, and if somebody from my family came at me like this, I'd be like, dude, you better step back. Step off because I'm about ready to knock into from here to tomorrow. And I wouldn't respond to that for a long time. I'd be like, geez. I don't know who you're talking to. Chill it.
My response would have been a lot stronger.
Yeah.
Than this comment or than this email. My response email would have been way stronger.
Yep.
Anyways, and Camille pretty much held herself together and
she really did. I have to hand it to her.
Kept herself composed. Man.
Yep.
Thankfully, my sisters and I don't talk to each other like this.
Oh, I know. It just seems so dysfunctional on so many levels. And, when you're growing up and you're learning to stand on your own 2 feet, you distance yourself from dysfunction.
Yep. Especially if there's kids involved, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was one of the weird things. I remember when I first read this where David's sister is talking about their mom calls me weeping and she's convinced that you're dead. That's pretty weird. I remember reading that. I was like, what the heck? Why would they say that?
She's being aggressive and passive-aggressive at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like, it's one thing to bar your siblings from your life and ongoing, and, I heard you changed your number, and that's just fine. She's being passive-aggressive. And then aggressive. And then she's pulling the sympathy card about mom weeping and convinced that you're dead. I'm frustrated, not being able. You can tell that she's upset about all of this.
Sure, of course.
And,
my brother or sister weren't talking to me.
Yeah.
Or anything. I'd be furious too.
And then at the very end, P.S. Susan and I are going to make a feast that day. I mean, it's like all these emotions going around.
Right.
Yep.
Right. that kind of tells me it's
Yeah,
not
I really don't want to join you after you just read me the riot act, but thanks.
right. Yeah. She's either a little clueless about that, or it's really, from her point of view, it's whatever their issue is, it's not that big that they can't still get together for Christmas. It's kind of the way that I took it.
And then if you go to Kamel's response, she keeps it together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry to do this. I sent David a more pointed email. Holy moly.
Yeah, we don't have that one. That would be the one. I'm surprised that they didn't include that one here, because whatever that one was is where whatever Allison said to David is apparently what caused David to cry on Kamel's birthday, or something like that. So yeah, something like that. It just seemed, when I read through this, and I feel weird reading through this. It's like this is their personal lives here.
Yeah.
But like, why are you guys putting all, like, what relevance does any of this have to your brother, to your son, dead? What is the relevance of any of this? Why are the police gathering all this? What are the police hunting for? What are they fishing for? What narrative are they trying to make sure that the public finds out about? What relevance does any of this have? I don't know. And then it's like, okay, well, great. If you guys are going to take this much, you put this much work into this, but then in other places they really don't. I don't know. I don't know. There's no fair and balanced investigation going on here. I think the more that I look at this.
Right, it's very skewed.
Very skewed. For such a important case, I mean, come on. This is a slam dunk case, so I just don't buy it. I don't get it. And I really don't believe that David's family or Kamel's family buy it either, but that's just my guess. But again, they're talking about the dead thing, and this and that, but like, that's what I would want to see. Like, okay, this email that is being mentioned here, that seems like it's very relevant to whatever personal thing that they had going on. Leaving that out kind of leaves that door open where people can say, oh, well, there was some problems. They were having some problems, but that other email may shed more light on the fact that this was just more of a family problem that they were going through, not anything else, not something that would cause David to kill his wife and his daughter and himself. And it's like they're subconsciously trying to plant all of these different things. And what's really weird is this timeline here is not really made. It's really made by David. I think this is really made by David's brother. He's the one who's piecing all of this stuff in, giving all of this, and he's the one who sends this out to the cops. He's sending them what he wants them to know. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to play some victim here too in this whole thing, and trying to, I mean, what he does with the whole GoFundMe thing and all that is just, there's so many layers of just weirdness, just things that just don't make sense, that just don't add up, and there's so much of that here. And people, need to get over it when they say, well, because you're bringing it up, that you're accusing him. We're not accusing anybody. Like, these are very relevant things. You guys brought this up. You guys put this in this. You gave the cops all of this data. How do you expect us not to comment on this? If we're really going to be the ones that are going to be serious about looking into this case, trying to figure out what happened, we have to talk about it. It's all relevant. Whatever you guys put in these documents, whatever you guys do, whatever you guys say is relevant because you make it that way, not us. Okay, so Detective Bone later meets with Kate Crowley at her home. Okay, bottom of 67. Later I met with David's mother, Kate Crowley. Her daughter, Allison, came to her house as well. Kate informed Detective Bone and I that she had not seen David Kamel or her granddaughter since the birthday party in August. She has not spoken with them either, and had concerns because they changed their phone number. But Kate had their phone number, right? Because she's calling them in the last month or so.
Well, what date is this? What date are they?
I believe this is still on the 19th. I could be wrong on that.
Okay,
but
when it says that Kate informed that she had not talked to them because she didn't have their phone number, do we know when that supposedly was? I mean, the reason why I'm asking that question is because according to the AT&T phone records, on the 20th, Kamel, on her record, she consistently made several calls to Kate, and then Kate Crowley actually called her phone number on the 20th, on the 21st. So there are a lot of calls for them. So it's not like they were keeping them at bay. It just seemed like the problem could have been that when the numbers were changed, I mean, it looks to me like as soon as Allison wrote that nastygram, Kamel and David just like, okay, well, we better call her, let her know that, hey, you have our number, it's all okay. And there was plenty of communication.
There was a communication issue because Kamel actually wrote back and said basically that David's mom already had their number.
Right.
And but Allison didn't know that. And Allison kind of eases up after that, I think too. So maybe there's.
And that's what I'm trying to say is the phone records substantiate that, show that there is communication going back and forth between the Crowleys and Kate.
During which month? Which month is that?
I'm looking at November right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so right around that time that all this is happening, they are in communication. Kate does have their number.
Yeah, and on November 11th, they talked to her, and let's see, what else do I have?
See, this is the weird thing, why the way that some of these detectives are paraphrasing these things. I mean, this is why it's good to have the statements from Kate. I don't know. Did they record this when they talked to Kate too? Or
good question.
I don't think they did, as far as I know. It was just more of an informal thing.
Is there anything at the end? Because a lot of times they'll say this was recorded and it's been entered into evidence, or...
No, not really. No. Yeah. Similar to what the other ones are. No, it doesn't say that with this. Even, I mean, Detective Sean McKnight really lumps a lot of stuff into this, where it feels like, okay, a lot of this stuff should be separate. This should not all be one supplemental report, because very quietly at the very end is where he also talks about how he met with Sean Wright. He talked with Sean Wright, with Jeff Miner, David West, Jason Allen. It's like, well, those should all be separate supplemental reports. He's lumping a lot of stuff into this one here. And so people that are just kind of skimming it, scanning it, a lot of this stuff they may just kind of pass over.
Yeah.
His reports really stand out because they're very different than a lot of the other police reports, as far as that's what I see anyways. Let's see. So, yeah, she hasn't spoken with them since August and had concerns. They changed their phone number. I mean, but obviously there's no big concerns because she had their number. What's this guy talking about? She had no insight into what they had done or why they had done it. She said that one thing she was sure of was that David and Kamel loved each other and they loved their daughter. She had trouble believing. This is the strange thing. This is the first thing that I ever saw. It was like, okay, is this where they're getting that pack thing from? She had trouble believing that David would do anything to harm his family without Kamel being in agreement with him. We don't know if that's just him twisting her words. That's a big, big statement right there to say without giving her any quote or anything like that. That's pretty weird. I mean, this guy's report here is just, this is another cluster, I think. The call to 911 about the suspicious person at the Crowley home was placed. This was an anonymous neighbor at 12:52 p.m. The unit arrived at 1:08 p.m.
And this
taken
is
from the cat.
taken.
Yeah, Brian Bone talks with him, and then talks with him later. But they're talking about the suspicious person. So Chris Klein is the suspicious person that was in the house on January 19th. This report makes it clear, page 78, and it's all right there. They tie him.
Go ahead. Can you go to that CAD report that you should have? I think that will help also.
There it is.
There it is.
And it says, the date and the time.
$12:51. Okay.
And then that it was the person refused to give their name, an anonymous neighbor. They closed it at 1:08. And some of the reasons why I wanted to look at this was, number one, this CAD report doesn't mention anything about the cleaners being at the house that day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's right smack dab in the middle of the day. Even if they would have been there and maybe had broke for lunch, it was still after 1 o'clock when they left. If they had broken for lunch between 12 and 1.
Right.
So, but there's no mention of the cleaners, and I thought that was an interesting little tidbit there.
Yeah.
And we have.
Does this also show about the whole lockbox thing, that there wasn't any lockbox? I'm not sure. Did the police go in the house on this day, or did they just...
I don't think so. I don't see anything in their notes mentioning that they went into the house, that the police went into the house. I know that they requested the lockbox combination for the cleaners, and when they went back to get the bullet fragment for Rania, and then when they went back again in February for item 57, they requested the combination again from Dan Sr.
Okay. Yeah, because I think there's another part to this screenshot here that gives a little more data, right? I just don't have the physical copy. Whenever I need it, I don't have it up.
No, I didn't have that actual part. This is just what I had.
Okay. Yeah, I think there is a little more to it. I could be wrong. I'll have to go back and check on that. But, because I have the physical one, and there may be a little more breakdown. Maybe not. I could be wrong on that.
But discussing the lockbox, if you want to go to that email or the text message. Wait. No, it's not a text message. It's a comment that Mason Hendricks made, I believe, in the group.
Yeah.
And he is discussing how he had the code for the lockbox. We have the code to the lockbox. We were cleaning up the house and organizing stuff. So they had the code.
Right. And that was January 28th. I think you posted that in the group, right?
I believe so, because it's, this was on the page.
On the page?
The
okay.
Justice.
That's Hendricks. He says, he was there with me as well as Danny. So he's talking about Klein. Klein was there with me as well as Danny and Dan. So Danny August Mason and Dan Jr. and David's best friend, Adam Schambauer. We have the code to lockbox. We were cleaning up the house and organizing stuff for the families so that they didn't have to. He and I found the hole in the ceiling, and we went up to the attic to see if anything up there needs to be brought down. I mean, this is just damning stuff here, for many reasons, right? And look at the date here. They haven't found. The police have not found the bullet hole. They don't know about the bullet. Hendricks doesn't. He may not even know about that bullet. But if he's up there in the attic where the bullet is eventually found, that's pretty big. That's a pretty big deal, I would think.
Can you go to the text message exchange between you and Mason, where he talks about being in the house?
Yeah, let me go to that now. So here's part of that text message. We went up there, I want to say, around the 23rd. Obviously wrong. I mean, they were there later on, too, but that's not what we're talking about. Or something. Because the smell was so bad still, and I think that sometime early in the week, they went back in and out and let off more chem bombs to dissipate the smell. All of us threw away our clothes because the smell wouldn't wash out. Chris was never there on his own. That's the big thing. Like, everything there, it's kind of like, okay, all right, maybe he was there on the 23rd, maybe he got the date wrong, etc., but then he says Chris was never there on his own. But yet, the 911 call talks about a suspicious person, not persons. So that's what, I really started questioning him here at this point. It's like, your story is not adding up. I think you're mixing in two different things that happen. You're putting them into one day. You don't want us to know that you're there on the 19th for some reason.
Yes, I would agree on that one, because if the cleaners had been there, they wouldn't have had to let off the chem bombs. They wouldn't have let off they wouldn't have had to throw their clothes away. The house would have been aired out, it would have been cleaned, and it would have been everything would have been taken care of before they were back in the house.
I mean, would this mean that the police and everybody who was inside the house, all of the investigators, would have to throw their clothes away, who were there on the 17th, or who came back on the 18th?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
They probably have. They know how to wash them. These guys just didn't. Yeah, but when you look at the calendar, because he's saying this on the 23rd, but then they went back in earlier in the week to let off more bombs. Well, I'm sorry, but earlier in the week would put that the 19th or the 20th.
Right.
And when they're cleaning, so it's like, what's he trying to say here? So they only did their job once. They didn't have to come back and do anything.
Do you have any insight on these chem bombs that they're talking about?
Well, it's not really a chemical. It's stuff that you let off in a house that helps neutralize the smell of decomp. It's commonly used with with most crime scene cleaners, especially when the smell of decomp is so strong. I forget. I should have been prepared because I remember what it's called. I'm trying to remember, but yes, it's used all the time. That with fans.
But is that something that the cleaners do when they're done, or?
Yes, it's one of the last things they do usually.
So if they're not done, if they're still moving stuff on the 20th, they may have let off some bombs probably after that, but not before then, right?
Yeah, probably not unless it's really, really bad, and then they might kind of try to get it to neutralize a little bit before they finish cleaning, and then they'll clean, and then they'll make sure it's neutralized before they release the house back to the owner. Okay. But, I mean, when you're looking at the timeline, he's making it sound like I don't know, all this time went by. But the 23rd, I mean, the house wasn't even released. The police were still in there gathering evidence on the 18th. And then the 19th is when all these interviews are going on, and Chris Klein shows up supposedly at the house. And then they're saying on the 20th and the 21st or 22nd, the cleaners are there. Then all of a sudden the 23rd, it's a big deal because it's so bad. We were there earlier in the week. Well, earlier in the week puts you there 19th or 20th, which means he was there before. So yeah, his clothes would have smelled really bad.
So I mean, here's where he says he was there. Chris Klein was there with me, Danny Jr., and also Adam. I don't know why Danny August Mason is really involved in this when they all, and he even says it. All of us watch Danny Mason. Like, if you're watching him, why would you want him in the house there with you? First of all,
exactly.
Doesn't really make sense. Then you have, Dan Jr. Notice Hendricks, this is all from his text messages, he doesn't mention Dan Sr.
No?
But Chris Klein does. I don't understand that. What is the relationship between Hendricks and Chris Klein? What is Chris Klein's relationship with David Crowley?
Yep. Why would he even be there? What right
did
he have to be there?
Right. And the cops don't specify that. Oh, Klein is a friend of the family. Well, they're all friends of the family. They all claim to be friends of the family. This guy's got to be more.
And it's so funny. This is what I find kind of ironic, if that's the correct term, is that they all say, oh, he was pushing us away. We hadn't talked to him for months. Blah, we don't know. And then the moment that they find the bodies, oh, we're all going in the house to help. Well, are you the friend or are you not the friend? And if you're not the friend, why are you in the house?
Yeah, and if David didn't want you in the house...
Yeah, why are you there now?
Live? What makes you think he would want you in his house after he's dead?
Exactly.
Really weird. He says, I was the one... Hendricks says, I was the one who noticed the bullet hole, and some neighbor reported Chris Klein's plate number to the pigs because he supposedly drives a suspicious vehicle, which is just a beat-up truck. The police didn't contact him till a month later, or something like that, and then I got a call from David's dad saying the police had found the missing bullet up in the attic. So Hendricks is in very close contact with David's dad. Yeah, some of it may even be a little too close contact if you look at some of the photos that are out there.
Yeah.
But it's very, very close contact. So Hendricks is not only, I think Steven Sanzeri in our last show put it right. It's like a cat and mouse game that they're kind of playing with us. Which is weird. Like, you would not do that if this was just an open and shut murder case, a suicide murder. You wouldn't do that. You only do that if there's something else that you want to get from this case. If you want to keep the conspiracies going and you want to make sure that there's a lot of disinformation out there, I don't know. It's really, really odd behavior. But he says the police didn't contact him till a month later, or something like that, and then I got a call from David's dad saying the police had found the missing bullet up in the attic. I had told Senior that he needed to follow up with those idiots for missing the bullet home the day we went, and he called and left a voice message, but those asshats never got back to him. Also, David's DNA was on the bullet, which we know is not true. The full magazine you have in the picture, yeah, because that's all we got. But those are kind of, I'm sure that's why we're covering this screenshot, right? It's just because of that first part there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The voicemail, and then the police never got back to him. I don't know. I mean, why would the police not do that unless they were unless their eyes were kind of raising, unless they were looking at this whole thing in a different light at that point. I don't know. That's pretty weird, though.
The police never got back to Chris?
never got back to David's dad. So David's dad had left them a voice message, according to what this says here, but they never got back to him. So I told Senior that he needed to follow up with those idiots for missing the bullet hole. See, Hendricks is still talking about the bullet hole. It's like he doesn't know about the bullet itself here. So, but then he does say, what does it say down here? David's DNA was on the bullet. So, at this point, you know, he's very clear too. David's DNA, not David's blood. It's a subtle difference, but it is a difference there.
Yeah, because he didn't say blood, he didn't say tissue, he said DNA.
DNA, right? Which are like, oh well, if his DNA is there, then yeah, his DNA should be on all of on everything in that gun, and it's not. Okay, so let's go here. Okay, Thomas Lapp, the originator, creator of the Justice Group and page, received a text at 11 a.m. from Brandon Hunt, J. Hunt, Brandon, whatever, a member of the GS crew, expressed their interest in coordinating their efforts and potentially setting up an interview to reach a larger audience. Yes, Dan Henderson. This was the main thing here. This was where I kind of took a deep breath and was like, cool. We got a bunch of people here who know David, who care about David, who care about this. They're going to do something with it. They're going to help us at least keep the case going. At least, you know, at the very least, get the alternative view, because at this point we have David was killed by the government, which I roll my eyes at that time. It's like, you guys don't know anything. You guys should not be saying this. That is the most irresponsible journalism that you could possibly do this early on when you don't know shit. We're talking about 2 days later, less than 2 days later, really. There should not be any theories thrown out. There should not be David did this or David didn't do this. It should be exactly what this group was going to do. Was going to discuss this, and was going to look at this and try to get to the truth. That's what a lot of these guys were doing. And I still believe that a lot of them had the right, that their heart was in the right place. I think a lot of them got scared off. I know Dan Hennon didn't get scared off, and I know a lot of other people, they had other jobs, they had other things and everything, but this is where kind of hope kind of died, and it was kind of like, okay, we're not going to have the hope, we're not going to have the big backing that we thought that we were going to have. Yeah.
I can't hardly hear you. There's some background noise on somebody's mic.
I'm sorry, I was opening sippy cups.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, great microphone.
Dad, I apologize. I should have muted it.
This mic is like
I'm
on
done.
the last leg. That could be me too. So how is it now? Is it okay?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm done with that. I'm so sorry.
Did you open up a can of worms over there? What's going on?
See, the sippy cup is that one.
But they were like wrapped in plastic and everything. I was trying to cut them and get them out so I could run them through the dishwasher. And it was like the most secure stuff ever.
Okay, so who is Thomas Lapp and who is Brandon Hunt /J?
Brendan J. Hunt. Yeah, so Thomas Lapp, I think I know more about him than about Brendan J., but Thomas Lapp is the guy who started the Justice for David Crowley of Gray State Facebook page. So he starts that page on the same day that Dan Hennon starts the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group. Thomas Lapp gets a bunch of calls from a bunch of people that want to basically become the admins for his page, and Thomas Lapp lets a couple people become, he lets them in, and they start taking out posts. They start doing some shady stuff. So Thomas Lapp warns Dan Hennon that, hey, these people might be contacting you to do the same thing. And it's all of these it's all of these goons. It's all of these guys who want to make sure that the narrative is that David Crowley is guilty. Yes, you can cry about it. You can, oh, I can't believe it. Oh, it's so sad. Everything is tragic. But they want to make sure that the narrative stays that David Crowley is guilty.
So they were driving this narrative from the beginning in every direction possible.
Correct.
Wow.
From the 19th here, that's when it all kind of starts. And not starts, but yeah, that's just some very valid points that I know we've talked about, but I don't think we've specifically talked about that this happened on January 19th, 2015. There's so much happening here. And is it all related to the... I mean, a lot of this probably happens... let's see, Thomas Lapp receives a text at 11 a.m. Some of this does happen before the suspicious activity in David's house on January 19, 2015. Just looking at this timeline here, I mean, look at this. There's a Daily Mail post with a story: gun enthusiast, his dietitian wife, and their 5-year-old daughter lay dead from a murder-suicide in their suburban home for weeks before neighbors discovered them. So again, key words there, because right around this time, the whole dietitian thing and the natural health stuff was really, really big. You know, in that circle, in the whole circles that we were kind of part of, it was really, really big. So of course, you know, you have somebody that you have this double murder suicide around that time with these key words here. It's just really, really odd here. And then at the same time, the same day, Dan Hennon, wow, they create their groups within 15 minutes without knowing each other too. By the way, they don't know each other. They're not like hey, I'm going to create this. You know, this is more spiritual. And I do believe Thomas Lapp is also a Christian too. Thomas Lapp kind of had been following David Crowley's page and everything, and I think Thomas Lapp was one of the guys who was like, you know, once he found out David Crowley was going the whole Hollywood route, Thomas Lapp was one of the first guys that actually warned him about doing that because of how satanic the whole Hollywood business is. Thomas Lapp receives a text message at 11 a.m. from Brendan J., a member of the Gray State Project, with interests to quote-unquote coordinate their efforts, potentially set up an interview to reach a larger audience. That's huge right there, because of everything that happens later on with that. Detective Bone and McKnight meet with the Crowley family. Okay, we know about that. At 12:45 p.m. on January 19th, Captain John Burmell sends the press release to 9 email addresses in the local media regarding the Crowley case. It's entitled Press Suspicious Deaths. So this was the first thing, because at this point you have, and this is less than an hour, I guess, or no, this is less than 1 hour from the quote-unquote suspicious activity at David Crowley's house on January 19th. The police report, or the police press release titles it as these are suspicious deaths. It's not ruled. They're not talking about a double murder suicide, which is good. That's how it should be, because that's what we have here. We have 3 people dead. We don't know what happened. Nobody knows what really happened. Of course, if you look at the January 17th 911 call, Judy Prochnow has it all figured out.
Right.
But, you know, she's not the only one who jumps to that, but she just happens to be the first one that's on record saying that, you know, talking about all of this stuff here. But even here on January 19th, we don't have that. the cops are still calling this a quote-unquote suspicious death. Of course, all that changes later on, but, and this is really when, January 19th is really when, that's when I first heard about this. If Dan Hinnon created this group on January 19th at 8:15, he probably called me or contacted me soon after. And it kind of got me thinking about this case, to kind of look at this, you know, see if whatever we could find on it. But that is probably the first day that I actually got involved in this case too. Just looking at this timeline here, and that's probably it. 12:51 p.m. a 911 call. Okay, so that's when the 911 call. So that's okay. So the first press release happens before the 911 call happens. That comes in. It's damage control from that point on. And then we have everything else that we have, where they contact Peck, they contact Mason, and then the UK thing, that's really weird. Oh, that was the photo. Okay, that's why you included the photo with the gas mask.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, because I just assumed that you would ask for it in the end.
Yeah, that was another one. It's like, oh great, yeah, you know, the guy hasn't even been, you know, buried or anything yet, but yeah, we're just gonna say that he's guilty. And the best photo that we can find is him in a gas mask with a rifle.
And it still looks like he's just posing for fun, and yet they twist it, yeah, to make him sound crazy.
Of course. I think we were able to actually get through
So,
all of those.
so to put it all nice and neat, we have proof here that shows that Mason Hendricks says they were in that house on the 19th, that they had the lockbox code, and basically the police officers were, and that Danny lied. Well, what else is new? But so everything we've been talking about is now backed up with proof from not only the police documents, and then texts from Mason Hendricks himself.
There you go.
Yep, I think that is everything that we were trying to point out. Just going back over.
I think you did a good job putting this together, Sophia. Did a great job.
Yeah, thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
It's a lot of good documents there, a lot of good stuff.
And, you know, just wanted to make sure that we had addressed everything before we had closed it out and moved on with the podcast in regards to January 19th.
Right.
Well, it's
And
good
this was some stuff. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said it's a good idea.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this was some stuff that we didn't cover the other day, and so it makes for a great bonus episode, though.
Yeah, I mean, you know, some of the stuff I learned for the first time today, and so I think it was very helpful. And the fact that you guys put it up here, and you're showing the police reports, and you're showing the text messages, and then the 911 calls, and, you know, to me, it solidifies that what we discussed is the truth, because they were in there on the 19th. They did have the lockbox code, according to them now. They state they have this. So there really can't, I mean, I guess people could still argue it if they want to, but I mean, how stupid would that be? It's like right here, black and white. So.
Correct. And, you know, we've backed everything up.
Absolutely.
So,
Awesome.
and I don't know
That's
what
great.
else
I
you
hope
guys
that-
would like.
No, I hope that puts a little bow on pretty much everything. If anybody had any thoughts or was going to do any research on what happened on January 19th, 2015, I hope that puts a little bow on anything that you may want to cover or anything that you didn't know that happened on January 19th. Some of the stuff we probably will cover in future shows. I think some of this may come up in the book at later points, but it's good to kind of have all of these different things and show how relevant, how important January 19th is. Just rereading some of that stuff is like, wow, that's pretty interesting. That was probably the first day that I actually knew about this case too, and I didn't realize that until I just read that in that timeline. But I remember exactly where I was, what I was doing, and I remember just kind of thinking, oh man, here we go. Here's another case here, and I just could not prepare myself for what was about to happen or how deeply this case would get. But it always seemed like there was something missing. And even to this day, I still feel like with this case, there's still a lot missing. With everything that we do know, obviously, if we know that David Crowley is not guilty, there's something very big that is missing, and that is to prove what really happened here. Mm-hmm. Thank you all. Any final words, or else I will shut this recording down.
I think we did it all, so thank you, Greg.
Got it.
Thank you, Catherine, for joining us today. And I was glad that Will could join us again.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, and again, thank you, Sophia, for all the work. I mean, that was a lot of work to put all that together, so thank you. And you guys, we'll catch you next time.
Okay, sounds great. And Greg, have a great weekend. Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Yes.
Stay safe out there.
That's right.
And until next time.
Greetings. What a beautiful, lovely day we're having here today. God bless you all, and thank you for taking a few minutes out of your schedule here to just briefly chat about what we're going to talk about next month. August 1st, 2021, we will be talking about closing the case. That's going to be a very, very big show. I've already looked at some of the notes that I want to take and some of the things that I want to talk about, and we're just going to get to the first couple pages. I can already tell that. There's no way we're going to get through the whole chapter. That would be a very ambitious plan. Nothing wrong with trying to, but there's just so much there. Just in a couple pages is what I've noticed. So I think this is going to be another one of those that we're going to break up into certain, into multiple shows, and like we did with some of the other shows, we had Suspicious Activity Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, etc., etc. I don't think we're going to do that this time. I think I'm just going to, from here on out, I'm going to start labeling each show just its own show, based on a certain title. So this one will be Closing the Case, and it is going to talk about obviously the chapter of my book, The Gray Stage, regarding David Crowley, and we'll go over what did they do to close this case. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty fascinating. You know, when the case was still open and we were kind of looking at, okay, what would they need to close this case and prove David Crowley guilty? I always thought the two would go hand in hand, and they definitely don't. Closing the case is one thing. Proving David Crowley guilty is a completely different thing. So the case is officially ruled exceptionally cleared. So that's been kind of the basis of the whole case, is it is exceptionally cleared, and somehow that automatically makes David Crowley guilty. So we know that that's not true. You probably would not be here if you really thought David Crowley was guilty, right? I'm guessing. That's what I would think. I wouldn't be here. I know that for sure. I'd be off doing something else right now. But here we are, and I do thank everybody for being here. This is going to be another powerful podcast here. I think this will be episode number 19. Could be wrong, but I believe so. So, we're getting close to having done this podcast for 2 years and learned a lot, and it's great to go back into this case for multiple reasons. Future things coming up. So, going back and looking at this, it's starting to get a little more personal now as the book goes on. For me, it gets more personal. This is going backwards to when I was first really invested in this case. First began to be invested in this case, I should say. And all the different games and all the weird things that were happening at that time. From here it gets pretty interesting because, again, we're trying to see, okay, what they closed the case. They closed the case in October of 2015. That's good. Why? And what is the quote-unquote conclusion to closing the case? Is still pretty fascinating, still pretty baffling how people could just assume, well, if the case is closed, then David must be guilty. But when you read this chapter, just read these couple pages here. The first pages 83 and 84 in the physical book, and you'll see exactly what they do to close the case. And it's like, wow, yeah, if that happened to me, man, I'd want the investigators to dig a little deeper. If that happened to one of my family, one of my friends, I would definitely want them to dig a little bit deeper, but to also maybe either keep the case open or at least understand, not put in the final thing, well, because we didn't find that anybody else did it, then it must have been David. It's like, what? That makes absolutely no sense. What did you guys do to find David guilty? Right? That's the big question. So that's the $1 million question, the $30 million question that we've been asking for 6 years now, going on 7 years, I believe. And it's nothing, absolutely nothing. So the chapter starts off where the police meet with David's dad, David's mom, his brother, his sister, and with Sidra, with Kamel's sister too. And I'll have to go back and see if they all met at the same time or if they met with Sidra separately. I'm not 100% sure about that. But regardless, they all met them on the same day. I believe it was March 14th, maybe. Obviously, the book will let us know that. But in March of 2015. And that's the first paragraph. Second paragraph, third paragraph, fourth paragraph goes on to say, yeah, okay, but that's before they had anything. They didn't have the DNA evidence yet. The autopsy conclusions were not done yet. The phone records, right? The electronics, a lot of the stuff they did not have yet. The financial records. So when they say, nothing was withheld from the family, basically, we told them everything that we knew about the case, but they didn't know that much about the case yet. It was March. It was in March of 2015. A lot of the stuff didn't come back until a few weeks later and a few months later too. So, and yeah, so I don't know. That was pretty frustrating to see that. So we're getting a little bit deeper into these chapters, and then the other part of the chapter that we will not cover in this month's episode or in the August 2021 episode, it goes into Tom Lydon, right? Because that's kind of like the nail in the coffin, basically. That publicly they get the final word. That's the final word. Chief Wright School. That's the final word. Or is it Burmel? Whatever, one of those guys. But that's the final word on it. Well, we believe David did this. Okay, and Tom Lydon, of course, doesn't push them on anything, which is that's stupid too. Okay, well, you guys believe David Crowley is guilty because of why? It's a pretty simple question. If you don't get a good answer, you got to push harder, push on them. That's your job. That's what Tom Lydon should be doing. Instead, it's more about, blaming us. We're the bad guys for asking questions. People are scared to come forward because of these guys asking questions. It's so stupid. It's just really dumb. So, but that's life, and that's their freedom. If they're free to believe that David Crowley is guilty, just like we're free to believe that he's not. We've done a great job, I think, at presenting the evidence and keep presenting the evidence, and we're going to keep presenting the evidence. The people who believe David Crowley is guilty have done a horrible job at proving him guilty. And it's rightfully done, because there is nothing that proves him guilty. The stuff that they throw against the wall is just all just craziness. Nothing counters what the documents say, or counters what the official conclusions are. It's crazy. The official conclusion is not David Crowley is guilty, case closed, boom. That's what you want. That's what you want to see. And if it's not, then of course it's going to open up doors to say, okay, well, if it's exceptionally cleared, if the only thing that you have showing that he's guilty, you say David Crowley is guilty because you couldn't find any evidence that anybody else was, that's pretty weak. I mean, that's very weak. And it's just more reason to reopen this case. We've given you a lot of reasons so far. The book is going to give you a lot more as we go on. But from here, it kind of goes backwards. The case for me goes backwards. A lot of this stuff is kind of what I started with. 'Cause remember, I got the documents. A lot of those documents that we got, that was all towards the very end too. That a lot of that came later. It didn't come with the 94 pages and the 464 photos. There was a lot of stuff that we got later, and talking with people, and so. This is where it gets down to the nitty-gritty, but I hope you've enjoyed the book so far. I hope it's been somewhat of a help for your research. Everybody should know the documentations, all of the documents, whatever you're looking for. You'll probably find it on my website, thegraystage.wordpress.com. And, if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer those questions too. You can send me an email to thegraystage@gmail.com, and I'll do my best to try to answer any questions that I can. Obviously, on the YouTube channels too, unless you're blocked because you're an idiot. You can leave a comment, and I will try to answer that as best as I can. So same with Facebook too, but I don't waste time on idiots. I don't waste time on people that are known liars, that have been proven to be false, or people that are just trying to stir up misinformation, disinformation, whatever it is. I've given them a chance. It's just not worth my time. It's not worth their time. It's not worth any of our time. So at some point, you just got to kind of say, all right, well, I tried. We tried, but yeah, that's about it. Sometimes it just does not work out that way. And that's just life. But again, we live in the greatest country where you are innocent until proven guilty. David Crowley has not been proven guilty, therefore he's innocent. It's as simple as that. It's a very simple truth. So I'll be working on a few other short videos too, similar to the little the Simple Truth one, and murder at 1051 Ramsdale Drive, things like that. I want to do a few more of these short videos. I think it will help a lot of people, and maybe if I ever do, try to move on to some other platforms, maybe I can add some of these shorter videos there. So, not doing Twitter, that's for sure. Twitch, still don't really understand the whole Twitch thing, but TikTok, I've been thinking about that too, but I don't really have time for all of this stuff. But if I do have some short videos, maybe I can just throw them up there. So we'll see. I know William started a TikTok, and I think he's going to start doing some shorter videos. There's another person who contacted me, and I forget what your name is, but I hope you're doing those TikTok videos. I know you planned on doing some videos about David Crowley, and let's hit him hard. Let's hit him hard with the facts, with the truth, and that's it. Let the people decide what they want to believe is true and what they want to believe is not true. So that's all I got today. God bless you all. Join me again on August 1st, 2021. And I'll see you then.
A simple truth. It really is this simple. Either you believe David Crowley is innocent or you believe he is guilty. If you believe David Crowley is guilty, you are wrong. If you believe David Crowley is innocent, you are right. It really is that simple. A United States Army veteran is dead. His wife and his 5-year-old daughter are dead. A thorough investigation would only conclude with authorities admitting they lacked evidence to support their accusations. If authorities were to admit the case remains unsolved, they would also have to admit that the public may still be in danger. I am not able to solve this case. My interest is in forcing authorities to admit David Crowley is innocent. The reason they refuse to talk about this case is not because they are confident of David's guilt. They lack confidence in their allegations. Their department wishes to move on, but they are only lying to themselves. They must know the simple truth, and they need to publicly admit this. Their credibility depends on it now. The unspoken truth is that David is innocent until proven guilty. Why are authorities running from this simple truth? How long do they think they can run for? You cannot run from God. You cannot run from your nightmares. And you cannot run from the facts. Why would anyone want to? What could possibly motivate someone to try? If you cannot prove David Crowley guilty, then he remains innocent. It's as simple as that. So the resistance we face is disgusting. If David was guilty, the evidence would be right in our faces. If David was guilty, resistance to our questions would not exist. If David was guilty, facts would be evident. There are no facts to prove David guilty. There are only facts which prove David innocent. Hence the resistance to getting justice for David Crowley and family. Who cares? Do the people who closed this case and decided to not speak about it ever again really care? Do the friends who accused David Crowley of being guilty days after his body was found really care? Perhaps they only care about spreading the accusations of David's guilt instead of researching the facts of this case. They don't seem to care about the facts which prove David innocent. Truth is a simple thing. Justice does not die. Facts prove David is innocent.